Good morning, YouTube. Today we're looking for the birthplace of the United States Marines. And I'm pretty sure there's something to do. We're walking through Queen Village, Philadelphia right now. And I'm pretty sure there's something going on around Catherine and 2nd. So I'm not sure what it has to do with the Marines, but we're gonna go check it out. So somewhere around here there's a building, and it has a lot of pictures of the Marines, and oh, here we go. Here it is. I actually didn't know it was here, but there we go. Yeah, so yeah, I don't know what this building is. It's completely unmarked. Wave to anyone who's up there. Who knows? But it's definitely interesting. Look at that. Let's see. Oh. It says, first in the fight, always faithful. Semper Fi, right? Semper Fi. And look at that. So they have some historical marker, which they have a picture of the historical marker, which we're gonna go find in a bit, but there's the tavern, Tun Tavern. Makes me wonder if this is related to the Tun Tavern, you know. That's a historical marker that we're gonna see, so I don't know. This is not the location. Whoever I am Gerson was, maybe they were a Marine. And yeah, I don't know. I looked online a little bit, didn't find anything about this location. Let's see if we can peek in. Oh, it looks like an office of some sort, right? Some sort of, maybe this was an old recruiting office for the Marines. I don't know. I am not sure. But something mysterious is going on here regarding the Marines. Today, I want to tell the story of Samuel Nicholas and the man who started the Marines. And I'm going to take you to the Tun Tavern where it all started. I have no idea what this is. If anybody knows why this Marine stuff is here, let me know. I think maybe it was an old recruiting office, but I figured I'd start this video with a little mystery. So if anybody knows more, please leave a comment. Thanks. Now, this is another Marine memorial that I, just walking through the random, those are Society Hill Towers, and we're in a plaza outside. And here's a little memorial to some Marines. And, Philly has a strong connection to the Marine Corps because this is where the Marine Corps started. And, we have a lot of history around here, and the Marines are intimately connected to Philadelphia history because the first Marine, here's a little teaser for later, but the first Marine, it turns out, his name was Samuel, and Sammy Boy was a Quaker. So that's a little contradiction in terms if you think about it, because of course the Quakers were peaceful, they were pacifists. And I grew up with a lot of Quakers out in Delaware County, and the idea that a Quaker could be the founder of one of the deadliest fighting forces in the world, in the history of mankind, is quite ironic, I will say. I can't imagine any other Quakers I know doing something like that. So Samuel Nicholas, the founder of the Marines, he was a pretty interesting guy, and we'll talk more about him. But here's a little memorial for you. Hey, future Sean here. Turns out I guess I didn't hit record when I was recording that memorial. I wanted to tell a little bit more about what that memorial was about. Basically, it was erected in 1985, and there was it's a memorial to the Beirut bombing in Lebanon, and the Marines, many Marines, servicemen, died in that engagement, and it was in the 80s, I want to say. And the memorial specifically cited five to 10 Marines from Philadelphia who died in Lebanon in that engagement in Beirut. So just wanted to fill you in. I don't know why my camera didn't record, but that's a really interesting memorial, and you can see the Marines symbol on it, you know, the eagle and the globe. So yeah, again, sorry I didn't get a better shot of, I guess my camera just wasn't recording, but there you go. So yeah. All right, Marines, we've arrived. I don't know why this marker is, well, I do know why. You know, we're actually next to the highway. Of course, I-95 is just on the other side of these bushes. And with most things that are historic and nice in the Philadelphia area, at least, you know, we've built highways through a lot of the historic areas. So you're gonna hear me shout a little bit in this segment because the traffic's loud. But yeah, here's where the Tun Tavern stood, and it's where the Marine Corps formed. Now I showed you another place in South Philly, about half a mile that way. And again, I don't know what that location is. That's too far south. At that time, when the Marine Corps formed, there wasn't much down that way in Philly. South Philly, South Street was the bottom, was basically the end of the city. There were some black communities down that way. It was a historically black neighborhood. Yeah, I definitely I doubt the Marines had anything going on. I don't think Samuel Nicholas was operating anything down that far in South Philly, but the historical marker is here, so we'll talk about it here. Now, clearly the Marines have visited this spot because Semper Fi, my friend, I think that's a website, right? semperfimyfriend.com, something like that. You can see some, I don't know what these are. Any Marines, if you're watching, you know what these were. Feel free to leave a comment. Let's see what's on the other side here. Yeah, some more patches. Fleet Marine Force, 26th. That's an interesting one. What's that? M-Clog. Ex Sustenendum Victoria. I believe, and my Latin is not great, but I believe that means we will sustain till the end, or lasting until the end. Sort of ride or die. Maybe that's what that means in Latin, ride or die. There you go. Semper Fi, my friend. Semper Fi. Now, of course, you know, the I-95 isn't that old, right? So there's a historical marker here, but you know, it begs the question: what was here before the historical marker, before I-95 was put in the 60s and 70s? And the answer is pretty typical of Philadelphia history. Basically, the original Tun Tavern, the building, was still here. I think it was still here all the way up until the 60s or 70s. I don't know exactly when, but whenever they put in I-95, the highway through Philly, they just tore it down. The original building where the Marine Corps started, they just tore it down. So it lasted for 200 years, and just around, basically right before the bicentennial, maybe like 15 or 20 years before the bicentennial in 1976, they tore the original Tun Tavern down. So it no longer exists, and instead we have a highway. So, all right, break for the fire truck. All right, so why did Samuel Nicholas start the Marine Corps in the Tun Tavern? That's a story that I'm going to tell you while we walk. I'm technically not supposed to be here, there's a construction zone. I don't know if you can see, but they're building a huge plaza out over I-95 because, they kind of realized after a while that building a highway through the most scenic part of the city wasn't a good idea. It took them like 50 years to figure that out, but finally they're figuring it out, and so they're building a plaza over the highway so that we can enjoy landmarks like this without shouting. Alright, so back there's the historical marker, and I'm going to tell you a little bit about Samuel Nicholas while we walk to the next location. And basically, why a tavern, right? Well, it turns out Samuel Nicholas, he was a bit of a drinker, and it ran in the family, and he had a dad who was a devout Quaker. Well, devout's the wrong word. He was a troublemaker. He was a Quaker, but he was a troublesome Quaker. The Quakers don't believe in violence, and they don't believe in alcohol. They have a lot of different things that they don't believe in, but essentially they were a big part of the temperance movement, and their commitment to sobriety and lack of alcohol runs deep. I mean, it goes back to, it's like one of their core values. And Samuel Nicholas's dad was a drunkard. He drank a lot of liquor, and he got in big fights in all the pubs, and the Quakers didn't like that, so they kicked him out. And so Nicholas's dad was kicked out of the Quaker meeting that he was a part of, and essentially he died young. And the implication is he died of liver disease or something, but we don't really know, do we? So take a little break. So Samuel Nicholas, he was clearly a drinker too, and he clearly didn't like the Quakers. I don't know, I'm surmising a lot of this, but he didn't go for the pacifism stuff, did he? And the thing is, when Samuel's dad died, he went to live with his uncle here in Philly, and his uncle was the mayor of Philly, or became the mayor. So he had a lot of connections. Got him into the Pennsylvania Academy, which was the UPenn, basically a feeder academy to the early University of Pennsylvania. So that's more Quakers, the Penns were Quakers, and so Samuel really got a lot of Quakerism going on. And it must have not jibed with him, because when he was in school as a young man, he got into a Masonic lodge, and basically became one of the first Masons in America. And that's a whole rabbit hole you can go down. There's a lot of Masonic thought influence from Masons, and there's a huge Masonic lodge here in Philly. Ben Franklin, I believe, was part of it. Masons were a big deal, but that's not what this video is about, so we're not going to go too much into it, other than to say that it seems like Samuel Nicholas took to the Masonic teachings more than Quakerism, and sort of made that his thing. So yeah, maybe people who are historians of the Marines can tell me if there's a connection there between the Marines and Masons. I'm sure there is, I just don't know much about it, so let me know in the comments. Alright, we're sitting here in Welcome Park because I don't want to be one of those annoying YouTubers walking around bothering people, so this is a little bit of an out of the way spot. I'll tell you a little more about the Marines. And so Samuel Nicholas, he was raised a Quaker, but didn't really like the Quakers, I'm assuming. And his dad certainly didn't set a good example, being a drunkard and getting kicked out. And maybe the young Samuel Nicholas sort of didn't like the Quakers partly because of how they treated his dad. You could probably connect those dots, right? Again, I don't know for sure, but stands to reason. And he was good at fighting, and seems like the he wanted to be a war guy, a soldier. So he was hanging out at the Tun Tavern a lot. That's where a lot of founding fathers went. Ben Franklin went there to recruit people to fight against the Indians in like what became, it was sort of a fighting force that sort of presaged the Continental Army. So the Tun Tavern was like this very important recruiting place, and Samuel Nicholas hung out there and presumably got recruited himself somewhere in that tavern or nearby. And there was a Masonic presence in that tavern, so he was into the Masons and into becoming a soldier. And that's how he started. So yeah, he was perfectly placed when the Revolutionary War broke out. He was in the right place at the right time to fight the Revolutionary War with the founding fathers. And clearly he made a name for himself because, at some point in the war, very early on, there was this admiral, and I'm not going to remember his name. He was a British guy, and he had an outpost down in the Bahamas, the British Bahamas. Britain they'd colonized the Bahamas, obviously, being just off the coast of Florida. So they had an outpost there, and the British Navy would basically launch raids up and down the eastern seaboard of the United States, up and down the 13 colonies. They'd launch raids from the Bahamas. So the Continental Army, like the Continental Congress and the founding fathers, they got together and they said, you know what, we gotta attack this place. We gotta stop these raids from happening. And so they kind of were like, does anyone want to do this? This is a crazy idea, but we have the Army, which operates on land. We have the Navy, which operates at sea. Can we put these two together somehow and get a sort of quasi-Navy army that can invade an island like the Bahamas, right? And Samuel Nicholas, being the wild man he was, volunteered to do this. He volunteered to create a brand new fighting force that can operate on land and on the sea. The stipulation that the Continental Congress gave him was that they wanted soldiers who could be shipworthy, who could operate as a naval force and be comfortable on the oceans as well as on the ground, because they needed to invade the Bahamas from the sea. So Samuel Nicholas decided, yeah, I think I can do that, right? And and loved that spirit, and so he went for it, and he went down to the Tun Tavern, and he recruited the first Marine Corps. It's what became the Marine Corps, what we know now as the Marine Corps, but it was the first. Did they call themselves the Marines? I think they did. They called themselves the Marine Fighting Force of the Continental Army, and they were, I'm not sure the guys who signed up even knew what they were getting themselves into. I mean, the Marines are obviously, nowadays, we know them as the greatest, one of the great fighting forces on the planet. They're the epitome of the warrior spirit in America, right? And I don't know that anyone at the Tun Tavern knew what they were starting, but Samuel Nicholas had a vision, and they signed up to go with him. And so later that year, I believe in early January, this was all like, I think the official founding date of the Marines is November 10th, 1775, right? November 10th, 1755. And by January, I think like January 4th, they were on a ship heading towards the Bahamas. And I remember the admiral's name of that ship was something really interesting, like Esek, E-S-E-K. And look at this. I thought I was...
Where'd Tim go?
I don't know.
Oh.
That's your friend. You never know, I'm literally in the corner of a park trying to get away from everyone, and a little kid comes running up to me. Anyway, so the Marines, they sail down to the Bahamas on a Navy ship, and because at that point they didn't have their own ships. Nowadays the Marines have ships and planes and all sorts of amphibious vehicles and tanks. Although I don't know, maybe they got rid of the tanks recently. I heard a thing that apparently the Marines retired all their Abrams tanks, which is kind of the end of an era for the Marines. Tanks are a big deal, but I don't know, maybe the tank fleet was outdated or something. But in any case, point is, back then they didn't have any vehicles at all, so they hitched a ride with the Navy down to the Bahamas, and they invaded the Bahamas, and they won their first battle without firing a shot. Sounds like the British gave up pretty easily, didn't have to really fight, and the British probably weren't expecting anyone to invade, right? So they just kind of gave up, walked away, and the Marines had their first victory as a young fighting force. I believe that was called the Battle of Nassau. Is that right? Yeah, the Battle of Nassau. And so that's a pretty good way to start. Start off as a fighting force, and then the Marines, Samuel Nicholas and the Marines, contributed to the Continental Army's battles for the remainder of the war and a series of other engagements. So that's the general overview of the timeline of events and why the Tun Tavern matters. It really was one of the places where the Marine Corps started, but also the revolution that started America. The American Revolution had a lot to do with the Tun Tavern. So, yeah, that's the story. Now, I mentioned that, of course, they tore down the Tun Tavern to build the highway because screw history, right? We don't want to preserve stuff, but whatever. I'm being facetious here, but they tore it down, and now they're gonna rebuild it, which is nice because I think the Marines, when they have time off, the Marines like to drink, they like to party, and they need a spot for that, I think. We tore down their tavern. Sorry about that, Marines. We didn't know what we were doing, I think, when we tore down the Tun Tavern. But we're gonna rebuild it, and they're gonna make a replica of the Tun Tavern right here on 2nd Street, and I'm gonna show you where they're gonna put it, and it should be there in a year or two, maybe later this year, hopefully for the anniversary of the founding of the Marines. It'll be their 275th anniversary, is that right? Or no, it's 250th anniversary. Yeah, like the founding of the country. Okay, so along with America's birthday, 250 years later in 2025, this Tun Tavern replica will open, and the Marines hopefully will have a spot now to go drink and celebrate. The Tun. One of the earliest taverns in colonial Philadelphia, Tun Tavern stood for nearly 100 years and was a witness to some of the most significant events in American history. Frequent patrons included Benjamin Franklin, George Washington, John Adams, and probably Blackbeard the Pirate. Oh, that's kind of cool. Interesting. But, of course, they don't say that the Marines were founded here. I'm not sure why. Because that's, to me, the most interesting spot. The most interesting thing about this tavern is that the Marines were founded there. Isn't that what makes it so... Look, you can even see. There's a Marine right there. There's a Marine right there. So, yeah, this is where it'll be. This old building. Somewhere back in this parking lot, I guess. This area. I don't know if this parking lot is going to stay or if they'll tear it down, or maybe they'll take over this building. It looks quite dilapidated anyway. It used to be a beer distributor right here, but I don't know what's going on back there. But yeah, so hopefully we'll get to see this. I mean, they haven't started. Oh, look at that. Groundbreaking. So November 10th. There's a groundbreaking here at the Tun Tavern. Okay, cool. But, you know, they better get started, right? Better get started. Marines got some drinking to do. Good old Samuel Nicholas and his dad started that tradition at this tavern. So maybe in a couple months, you know, it says November 10th, 2024. Maybe in November 10th, 2025, we'll be drinking in Tun Tavern with the Marines. What do you think? Think I could come along? I'm not a Marine, but I get it. So we'll see. Anyway, yeah. So this is where it'll be. We'll see if we can get a drink later this year with some of the Marines here. All right, here's the Arch Street meeting house where Samuel Nicholas was a member. Looks like they're doing some construction, so they're digging up the ground. Wonder what's going on. Haven't been here in a little while, so guess they're doing some renovations. Makes sense. We'll keep our eyes on the ground. Maybe we'll see something interesting and historic. I mean, look at the bricks. Those are some old bricks. Makes you wonder how old those bricks are. I mean, it's hard to say without a marking, but sometimes you can tell from the way the brick was made whether it's an old brick or not. But I'm not a brick expert. There are people who specialize in that, and maybe they would know. But yeah, this is the meeting house where Samuel Nicholas, where I guess he was kicked out of, or he attended this meeting house after his dad died. I'm not exactly sure if he remained a member of this meeting house or had any affiliation with it. But this was technically where he went to worship. And there used to be a marker somewhere on the grounds here about Samuel Nicholas, because of how famous he was. So let me see. I mean, I don't think he was buried here. I'm pretty sure he was buried somewhere else. Let's see. Someone lies the body of... No, that's not it. You know, there are graves here because, of course, it's an old meeting house, so there are going to be graves. There's a little, what is Quakerism? Nice, nice, nice. Okay. Here, I'm going to walk around a little bit, and if I find anything about Samuel Nicholas, I'll turn the camera back on. Okay. So we're standing on this is obviously like a mass grave where there are thousands of bodies are buried here from throughout history. The Quakers would have buried, but then I guess this sign is saying that some Quakers decided that headstones were inconsistent with the plainness of Quaker principles and practice, and so they removed the headstones, which means that we don't know who's buried here. There are tens of thousands of people, but we just don't know who any of them were. But I was reading this, and look, they say, find the headstones. Some of them are remaining. If you look hard enough, you might just be able to find all four. And we already found one. Saw that one. And right there, Samuel Nicholas. Interesting. Oh, let's see. I'm gonna walk around, and if I find it, I'm pretty sure I've seen it before, but if I find it, I'll show you. Okay. I found it. All right. Here it is. Now, of course, every grave marker for a Revolutionary War hero is marked with a flag, a Continental flag, usually. But here you go, Samuel Nicholas Memorial. Samuel Nicholas was expelled from this Quaker worship community for founding the Continental Marines, the precursor to the U.S. Marine Corps, during the Revolutionary War. After the Revolutionary War, Nicholas became a member of the Society of Cincinnati, an exclusive, patriotic organization that continues to promote public and scholarly work in the American Revolution. In 1790, Nicholas died of the yellow fever and was buried here at Arch Street, though the exact location is unknown. The Marine Corps considers Nicholas their first commandant. In 2011, they laid this commemorative grave marker for him on the property. Wow. And that it said he died of yellow fever. Yellow fever was a big deal. Many Philadelphians died of yellow fever in a plague around that time. It was called the Great American Plague, or the Great American Disease, at that time. And I think about 5,000-ish, around 5,000 people. I mean, we'll never know the exact number, but around 5,000 people are said to have died in that yellow fever epidemic here in Philly. And I'm guessing he was one, and that's why he ended up back in this burial ground, even though he was kicked out. So, this might be one of the only... I don't know, someone else should tell me, but this might be one of the only graves of a soldier in a meeting house burial ground. I don't know of any other. I've been to quite a few meeting houses, having grown up in the Philly area, and I can't say I've ever seen another, at least not a Revolutionary War burial like this, with flags and everything. So that's very special. I've never seen one in a meeting house burial ground, in a Quaker burial ground. So, because Quakers are pacifists, so this is very, very interesting. In fact, I'll just come over this way so you can get a better view. There's the Arch Street meeting house and Samuel Nicholas's grave. So this is the Marine that's buried here. Hey YouTube, actually, surprise, surprise, I was walking by the cemetery, Christ Church Cemetery, where our friend of the show, Bob, works, and I wanted to stop in and say hello to Ben Franklin. His grave's right there. But apparently, there's also a Marine buried somewhere here, so we're gonna try and find him. So, hey, it's Bob, we're back. And he says there's a Marine buried here, so it's part of my Marine series. I'll cover this grave. He said it's somewhere over that way?
It's over that way, and you'll see the Marine Corps flag.
Okay.
You'll see a little bit here.
Oh yeah, the red sticking out. So.
We don't know a lot of information about him, but he died kind of young.
He died young. Okay. So, and you were saying he might not have been in the Tun Tavern. We don't really know.
Yeah, I don't know. Do you know when it, oh no, that started very early. Didn't it?
Yeah, that was like
16 something.
No, that was
like
17. It was right around the Revolutionary.
Right. Yeah.
So.
Yeah.
Anyway.
The other thing about the Tun Tavern was also the start of the Masonic.
Oh, you know what? I was actually wondering that. In the video I just did, I was thinking, there's got to be a connection between the Masonic Lodge and the Marines.
Yeah, that
I don't know about that.
The Tun Tavern, when it in its early forms, right, held the first or one of the first recruitments for the Masonic Masonic Temple. Yeah.
Okay. Interesting.
So that was a little sidelight that I didn't know of. Somebody told me that. Yeah.
Nice. Well, thanks for that.
Okay, you're welcome.
Yeah, there you go. There's Bob. We didn't plan any of this. I'm just walking by. So,
extemporaneous.
There it is. Thanks. Come visit Bob here in his kiosk in Christchurch.
Yeah, please do. Yeah.
All right. Okay. So do we see the grave of the Marine anywhere? Let's see. Oh, I think I see it. Look at how weathered down some of these grave markers are. These gravestones. Incredible. Yeah, let's go pay our respects here. There he is. United States Marine. Being buried in Christchurch Cemetery. It's a beautiful view. It's a beautiful view. You know, under a nice tree in this beautiful historic cemetery. Yeah. It's not too much. Let's see what it says. Okay. I don't want to touch that too much, but it says Jacob Mott Huger Esquire, native of South Carolina and Lieutenant of Marines. In the service of the United States, he departed this life on the 8th day of October, 1798, aged 25 years old. So he's a young man. We thank him for his service. Well, that's where the video ends today. This has hopefully been informative about the life and story of Samuel Nicholas, and the foundation of the Marine Corps, or what became the Marine Corps. You know, when they build Tun Tavern, when they rebuild it, you know, I'm definitely gonna go check it out. And you know, I'm a peace-loving guy myself. I was raised around Quakers, and I was raised in a Gandhi-loving family and a you know, pacifistic Christian community. And so, you know, I'm not a big war guy, but I certainly appreciate everything that our Marines do and our you know, veterans do for us as Americans. You know, without especially Revolutionary War heroes like Samuel Nicholas, we wouldn't be here. So gotta put respect on his name. Thank you to the Marines. Thank you to Samuel Nicholas, and you know, Semper Fi. My name's Sean. This is my channel, Saul Good. If you like what I had to say, please like and subscribe for more of these history walks and talks. And I'll see you in the next one. All right, bye.